Hello guys, welcome to a guide to Visage. The way I'm going to structure this video is first I want to cover the basics of the abilities and stuff like that, and I want to give some tips prior to showing some gameplay on what your mindset should be throughout a game. And I'm just going to open up a replay after this demo section where I'm going to show exactly what I do throughout a match with this hero, and I will explain exactly why I do the things and what strengths and weaknesses you should know, capitalize on, play around, etc., etc. But before I do
My
that, it's really
search
important that
continues.
you understand what Visage does because it's a hero that on paper is very complex and in practice only you only need like a couple of games to get used to him, and after that you can kind of fine tune it to perfection where you can make very, very clever plays around the uh, no other ability than your ultimate, but I'll cover that in a moment. But first, I want to cover his abilities like very short. Basically, uh, Visage, ranged intelligence hero, has a mixture of magical and physical damage. I don't know the exact distribution of it. I don't know how much percent of magical damage you're doing, how much physical. I wouldn't say, I can't say it's 50-50. I feel like it's 50-50, but maybe it really depends on the stage of the game, whatever. Um, but you know, I'll be talking about builds later on and stuff. I just want to cover what his abilities do. So his first ability, it's Grave Chill, and you target an enemy unit, you get movement speed, and you also get extra attack speed. And it's something that you cannot see here, but the dummy is actually slowed in both movement speed and attack speed as well. It's the exact same number, but it's negative, so I gain a total of 32% movement speed on all levels, by the way, um, as well as 64 attack speed. It's just that the duration skills across levels and the cooldown goes lower. To the point that it only has a downtime of 4 seconds, so it's very, very strong. Next to that, you got Soul Assumption. Now, it's very hard
There is
to
understanding.
showcase it if I don't have any heroes, so um, this is an ability that if you read it the first time you probably won't understand, but essentially if damage is done around you, then um, you gain stacks, and the exact amount of damage that needs to be done is shown here. It's 110, and for each time 110 damage is done to someone else, doesn't matter if it's your ally dealing damage to an enemy, you dealing damage to an enemy, or an enemy dealing damage to an ally, or you gain stacks, and this means, like, what does it mean actually? Well, I'll show you right now. I think Axe can attack the dummy. No, it can't. So Axe is just gonna attack me, and as you can see, 110 damage is done twice, 3 times now. I gain stacks, and well, it doesn't want to go to max number, but essentially, the more levels I put into this ability, the higher the maximum charges. For each charge, I can deal extra 65 damage on top of 20 base magical damage, and I have to do it quickly, or at least within how many seconds? Yeah, 6 seconds. After 6 seconds, each charge separately has a duration of 6 seconds, in which, which after it will just deplete. Um, so yeah, as you saw, they just depleted, but if they decide to attack me again, essentially it's gonna go up, and you know, I'm content with having 4 stacks because I can only get 3 stacks in this case. I won't get any more
The
because they
shadow
don't deal enough damage.
spreads.
But imagine in real game, they would deal more than enough damage probably if they use spells and stuff like that, or have high damage attacks. I can immediately consume the charges and use it for a nuke. TLDL, too long don't listen. The more damage is done around you, the more stacks you get. As long as it's done in 6 seconds, you can consume the charges, deal magical damage to a single target, by the way. Um, if you paid close attention, then you saw my W actually hitting 2 targets, but that's because I got the talent, which allows me to randomly hit another soul assumption uh, to another unit, which prioritizes an enemy hero. Um, so yeah, it's essentially a nuke great in fights where a lot of damage is done. Like even if you're just dealing damage to one target, you can easily get a lot of charges up. Your third ability is a passive ability, Gravekeeper's Cloak. It basically gives you resistance. It gives you 4 times the amount that is showcased here, so it's 4 times 20% damage reduction. I think it's any kind of damage. I don't know if it reduces pure damage, but it doesn't say. But it just says damage reduction overall. Um, yeah, 4 times the mentioned amount, as long as you have the maximum amount of layers. How do you lose a layer? Well, first of all, I want you to know that there are these kind of rocks around me. That's this passive ability. I don't know if many people have realized, but it took me a long time to understand. I don't know when they implemented it, but each rock represents a layer, and if I take more than 40 damage, I think, yeah, 40 damage, I lose one rock. I lose 20% damage reduction because that's tied to a layer. So losing all layers, I will have 0% bonus, and it takes on max level 3 seconds for it to recharge. What this essentially means is that when people initially do high damage to you, it effectively gets reduced by on max level 80%, and all the damage that is done after will deal more damage um, every time you take another hit from a nuke or an attack or whatever, as long as it's above 40. So you're really good at tanking high damage nukes or high damage right clicks, whatever, initially. However, if the enemy has high attack speed, that means their first four attacks will be reduced, especially the first few ones. But after that, you take full damage. Now understand that this hero has very low initial armor. In fact, the agility gain is really bad. I don't have any items right now, and with the agility gain that I got, I have 4 armor on level 25, which is garbage. And my magic resistance, or my Visage's magic resistance, initially is only 18%. He's the only hero in the game right now that has a different magical resistance than 25%, and it's in fact lower. And the reason why is because just balancing with the Gravekeeper's Cloak. It's just a decision by Icefrog. So, yeah, this is something again could be very complex when you read it, but in a game you don't really care about. All you have to keep in mind is that you shouldn't be scared of tanking a nuke initially, but believe it or not, no one really does it initially. But if you give yourself enough time to recover these layers and the enemy then hits you with a nuke, this could be convenient for you as you take way less damage. It's just something you don't have to pay attention to. It's for the enemy team to worry about, basically. They have to understand these complex mechanics. You're just putting it in front of them for them to deal with. Then you got your familiars. Oh boy, can I explain this in a very short time? I don't know. So I just popped my ultimate. It summons 2 familiars right in front of me. And these familiars have an unlimited amount of duration, and they, as you can see, have 700 HP, or at least that is on max level. And they have a set amount of armor. It's stuck on 2. Yeah, it's stuck on 2. And they have a magic resistance of, let's see, 35%. And you can, of course, add to the resistances by buying aura items, etc., etc. They can attack, but they have a really short attack, and they deal a static amount of 60 damage. However, you can give them attack speed and movement speed if they are within, I think, 800 radius uh, of Visage when he uses Grave Shield. So when I use this, you can see they have a buff and their attack speed is increased. This is when they turn into machine guns, essentially. I mean, they already deal a decent amount of damage on their own. And does the damage actually scale per level? Yes, it's 30, 45, 60. But with Grave Chill and some R reduction on the enemy team, you can deal a lot of damage with these guys. And like I said, even on their own, they're a problem. They have one ability, which is Stone Form, which has 2 purposes. First of all, it stuns an enemy unit. So what it does is you press Q, dead. It deals magical damage, and the exact amount of magical damage you can see depends on the levels you have put on your ultimate. And on max level, it does the stated amount, 140, with 1.5 second stun time, 1 second on lowest level. And what this also does is during the time of the like during a certain time after you've used the stun, which is 6 seconds, they stay on the ground and they do absolutely nothing. Like they're stuck. If you use any abilities on them, it will not work. Um, I don't think they're even targetable. Um, they're just yeah, it's stated as invulnerable in Dota logic. In Dota logic, it has certain rules tied to it. Find out when you read the Dota wiki or something. But during that they also regen, and that is the that is like the second purpose of this spell. It's not just to stun, but it's also to give them the regen, which means that if you use it cleverly, you can get them back on full HP after having made a risky move with them. Downside, however, is when you do that, say access call, and also has his third ability. Uh, once the familiar goes up, he can be stunned, uh, and the familiar can be killed. And if the familiar gets killed, he gives away a decent amount of gold. I think it's 100 gold each. Maybe it's increased or reduced, but it's a lot. And if you feed them both, it's 200 gold. It's roughly a hero kill, um, etc. And yeah, they give very little vision, by the way. You could initially scout them by making them literally hug a certain unit, but you have to understand that no matter whether it's daytime or nighttime, the enemy will see the familiars before the familiars can see anybody, unless you use them around observer wards, whatever. But anyways, they can issue an attack, they can kill wards, they can attack a tower far out of your reach. They can essentially go everywhere on the map, but understand that you have no way of giving them mobility outside of using Grave Chill when they're within your reach, so you cannot teleport them back to you. Um, Important thing to understand um, next to the abilities are his Aghanims upgrade. When you
A
buy it,
familiar
your
scepter.
next summon familiars, um, so next time you summon this, you will gain an extra familiar. But only after having used Summon Familiars another time. So it won't, like, I have bought an Aghanims now, and it says it summons 3 familiars, but the problem is I don't see a third familiar right now. Like I said, you have to
How
resummon them.
different and
And
familiar
that means that this
paths.
ability has to go on cooldown. So
As
what's the
commanded.
purpose of this cooldown? If your familiars get killed, you can resummon them. However, if they get killed during the cooldown, you are without familiars, and that's pretty sad because they add to your arsenal. Familiars have next to their attributes of attacking and stunning, another purpose. They're basically your DPS. So when you
Soaring.
attack somebody, they deal a lot of damage. Especially combined with Grave Shield, they deal a lot of damage. Um,
Swooping.
and they benefit off of you reducing armor of the enemies, and they also benefit off of armor bonuses, right? So Basilius is a very cost-efficient item on this hero, and I would keep it for a really long time within the game, um, just to make the familiar stankier against right clicks, because they can easily get right click down, because they're a bit HP, even though it skills per level of summon familiars, it skills really badly. So yeah,
With
putting that aside,
purpose.
the only other thing I want to note is hotkeys. I just want to keep this short. I
Indeed.
use one for my main hero, and I use two for my familiars. I have set it to control groups, so as you can see here, control groups, group 2 is 2. So that means that when I hold control during a demo, during a game, doesn't matter, and I select certain units and then press 2, every time I press 2 without having to press control anymore, every time I press 2, I'm going to select my familiars. Um, for convenience, I have tied 3 to both my familiars and Visage. I also have the F1 button, which is selecting all units, and I also have caps lock tied to selecting all other units but Visage. Now it's really important that you have both a separate hotkey for familiars as well as the other all other units hotkey, because say you have an illusion room, then it could be very uncomfortable having to box the familiars in constantly. You want to have a hotkey for them so that you can center the camera around them, and in case you have the illusions, you have both the option to select the illusions and the familiars, as well as just the familiars. So make sure to have hotkeys set up for all the units, all other units, all of the units, your main hero, all um, and then a combination of the familiars set as a separate control group, and both Visage and the familiars as a separate control group. So 2 for me is just familiars, 3 for me is both the Visage and the familiars, excluding illusions. Um, so yeah, very important to know. So I'm gonna talk about game dynamics, just or whatever. Just I'm gonna get into a game now. I hope I was clear on explaining Visage as a hero. I've picked out a game here already. As you can see, it's a mixture of legend and ancient players. It's 50-50 pretty much. Low ancient, high legend. Is it really high tier? Well, there's still trash people here, but I feel like this game was pretty coordinated. The enemy team had their attention draft, especially mine. Um, in fact, some interesting things to note is that Visage has very clear counters, but Visage is very strong into many heroes that are very annoying to deal with, like Tinker. Visage is really good against Tinker because he just does not die to a combo. Like many heroes have to buy an Aeon Disc to survive his combo or Glimmer Cape, whatever. Visage does not have to do that, and all you have to do is buy a Sheep Stick and you can kill Tinker within that duration because why? You have a lot of damage and you have stuns, and therefore you can really deal with him well. So into Tinker, Visage is a very successful hero. I think a Dota buff, he has a very high win rate. Also into Necro, because Necro's ult is not really effective against you even if you're low. Um, and you have a really easy way of pinning him down even if he has his Ghost Shroud. I think it's Ghost Shroud. Yeah, the thing where he turns ethereal, kind of like Ghost Scepter. You could just stun him during that duration, and then afterwards slow him. And by the time that the Ghost Shroud is off, your familiars are back up from the stone form, and you can start attacking him again. And therefore, you can easily play around the full duration of Ghost Shroud. It's very strong. So these two heroes are just examples of heroes that can be heavily countered. But the enemy team, for example, they picked one hero in particular that on paper and statistically does very well against Visage. It's the Lycan. Why? Because during his ultimate, Grave Chill does nothing against him except slow his attack speed, but he doesn't care about it. If he goes for the summon build, then he can basically send off his summons to you, Visage, and the summons alone will kill you because they deal a lot of instances of damage, and that means that your layers will be removed pretty quickly. And next to that, you know, if you buy a necro book, then it reduces your mana and stuff like that, and that is a really big issue. And combined with the ultimate of Lycan, these summons are absolute trouble to you. So I think that's like the biggest counter. Problem this game is that the Lycan was picked not so convenient situation. Like we had other heroes that could really easily deal with him, and yeah, I don't think he went necro the necro book. So yeah. I think I'm just gonna speed it up here. It's not really important what I do in the laning stage. I'm just gonna go on my perspective. And as you can see, I went for the Basilius to just give my familiars in the future within this game the armor. And yeah, next to that I just go branches and tangos. They are just there to supplement my mid laning, and yeah, leveled the Grave Chill on the one. Our build, by the way, I'm just gonna keep this on normal speed. There isn't really anything in particular that you have to attend to, except that my CS won't be that great, but I'm just highly emphasizing range creeps and both denying as last hitting the enemy range creep, and I'm utilizing my Grave Shield for doing that. So talking about the build, there are two possible builds you can go for, which is going a point on Grave Chill, 1 point on your W, and then putting multiple points on your third ability. Your third ability is very important for you to start pushing without the enemy team being able to stop you really easily. And putting up 1 point on Grave Chill already gives you the maximum effect. Just the duration is lower and the cooldown is increased, but still has max effect. Really good for tower pushing with your familiars because they deal a lot of damage with it. So yeah, the argument of keeping that up on 1 point is so that you can start prioritizing your third ability as well as put a point on your W. Your W deals full damage per stack. It just has a reduced amount of maximum stacks you can have at a point, being level 3 on lowest level, but it still deals decent damage. The downside of this skill build is that you will lose a lot of mana because your W has its highest mana cost on level 1, and it's 170. And believe me, you're not going to buy any mana supplementing items in the settings.
Thanks and have fun.
But it's really low mana regen, and it's only really good if you have one low cooldown skill. That's like when you can manage the cities alone and maybe some clarities. But you know, going for your W, it really sucks. So instead, what I'm doing, as you can see here, is I'm gonna max my Q and max my third ability. And whatever you give the priority really doesn't matter as long as by level 9, I think, or level 9 or 10. Oh man, come on, this is basic knowledge. Anyways, at any of the 2 levels, you will have both abilities maxed. Oh yeah, level 9, because level 6 is spent on your full. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, in the meantime, there's a nice skill for Q. But, and I'm also doing better on CS somehow, which should not be happening. If this game, I was not the highest rank, and I think I was playing against an ancient. I'm not sure. Nonetheless, the CS is not really effective. Should not be happening. In just a neutral game, your CSing should be slightly worse. But if you just prioritize the range creeps, you should be on even XP or even higher XP, assuming that the enemy does not out-deny you. And your goal is to just get level 6 as soon as possible, preferably earlier than the enemy mid, depending on what heroes you're playing. Because when I'm level 6 earlier than the Storm, in this example, I can kill him. If he has level 6, he can escape, and that sucks. Unless he badly manages his mana. But, you know, in the case of Invoker, for example, it really doesn't matter whether I get level 6 early or not. I just don't want to lag behind on him. It's always a bad thing to be behind, you know. So yeah, I've items queued up already. The usual thing for me in the mid lane to do is to instantly buy the healing salve from the bounty rune spawn. Then I just get my boots on this hero. I already got the Basilius for the mana regen and armor, and it's enough for me to maintain my Grave Shield spam in the lane. In this game, I have prioritized putting a level 1st in Grave Shield solely because seemingly I would get away with harassing with it constantly, and it did secure me denies. I think I've denied every range creep up until this point. We'll get to see that. You can just check that back. Not really an important fact, but yeah. I'm going for my Medallion of Courage next, and after that I'm going for the Hood. One item I'm completely skipping here is Helm of the Dominator. Helm of the Dominator is a really, really good item. It has the headdress, and you can control another creep, which benefits off of your Grave Shield. So it's like win, win, win. And some creeps scale really well in the late game. They either add extra attack speed or armor, or there's one creep, the troll, the Dark Troll Summoner. He has a BKB piercing net, which is super strong, especially in the late game, which allows you to follow up with stuns if you want to do it. You know, maybe you just want the enemy to be pinned down and then you get a free kill. I think it's good to go for every game. Like, I wouldn't blame you for going for it every game. The reason why I'm not going for it is because of pacing. It's an item that cannot be built into something else, and but is still a very, very effective item until the point where you sell it to buy for other items. It will not be too soon in the game, but you know, you're gonna have to sell it at some point. That's not really the reason why I'm not going for it. It's the fact that I'm playing in considerably lower tier, where the fights are very chaotic and unorganized. It's better to reduce your options and just make yourself very, very tanky, because Visage, his kit is already strong, or at least strong enough for this tier at least, because of the lack of understanding of how the hero works. If I'm playing in a higher tier, I definitely want to use the power spike of Visage once he gets level 6 way better, and that's where the helm of the Dominator is stronger. But in a lower tier, I'd rather have a saved up slot for later on in the game, where you know, people just don't have the knowledge of dealing with me, so you know, I will, for that reason alone, I'll skill better in the late game, because I will not die often at all. And in the higher tier, I have a higher risk of dying because things are organized, and I will have to push my power spike. That's what Tetris is good. Still, at this tier, I will not say the Helm of the Dominator is bad, but nonetheless, I go for the Medallion of Courage. Really good synergy with my familiars. Talking about the game, by the way, what I've done so far is that I range creeps get that. As soon as I got level 6, I pushed out the wave, and as soon as the enemy hero would be gone or just unable to stop me, I would go for the tower every time, using Grave Shield on an enemy creep. and it took me like 2 grave shields and a full focus on the tower for it to be dead. Very, very quick. This secures a lot of map control. I want to abuse the ability for me to kill the ancients here. However, that ancient camp that you just saw is really annoying to deal with at this point, because I don't have the hedges. Like if I had a Helm of the Dominator here, then I would have easily taken that camp without having to waste much time. But because I don't have it, the familiars don't get regen, and I have to use stun constantly for him, and they can quickly die to it. I just don't want to. I'd rather push my tempo. So what do I do as soon as the mid tower is down? Now I'm kind of standing around just because I want to put a lot of pressure on the Storm Spirit, thinking I could kill him. Didn't work twice, so I was kind of wasting my time. But if I were just thinking straight, I go straight bottom. Even though it's not even 10 minutes in the game yet, I got the T1, and this hero has the power to push towers, so why not go for another tower? Well, the 2 best towers to get are the mid tower of the enemy, of the enemy side of the map, and getting their safe lane tower. With that down, their big jungle side, so for Radiant bottom, for Dire top, will be very hard to keep safe, considering you lose a lot of map control, losing the T1s there, and that increases the odds of winning, even in an unorganized tier like this. Well, there was some organization here, but you know, like from Divine onwards, it's going to be way more organized than this. Fight's going on here. All I do is just, knowing that our teammates here, I'm just gonna stun stack on the dying, even though it's gonna lag me. It's gonna reduce my damage output because my familiars are down on the ground, not attacking people. I know that my teammates will have damage, so it's a bit altruistic. Consider this as well in fights. Just have a great read of what's going on here. And guess what? It's 9 minutes in. I'm already going for this one. Remember what I said before? I said 2 grave shields and the tower is roughly dead. In between my first grave shield to the tower glyph was used, but I used the second one and it went far beyond that HP. Far under the HP. I used another grave shield, and within this grave shield duration, I think it's going to go down. Yeah, well, roughly at the end. So, at this point of the game, I have a lot of map control. So, looking around, let's see. Basically, they have to place an ward in the opening of the jungle, over here, over here, over here, whatever, if they want to keep control of this jungle over here. And there's no more unit granting true sight around it. Now, if their mid laner is farming here, he is actually in huge danger unless the support is sitting here wasting time. It's not that much of a waste of time if the support times it perfectly, so that as soon as the support is sitting there, the mid is ganked and the support can actually save the mid. But that's not happening. You always have to take a chance of sitting there and wasting time. And same thing for the bottom lane. So whoever is farming here is dead. Whoever is farming mid has a high chance of dying. I'm saying high chance of dying because there's one hero that can actually just simply escape. But, you know, the pressure for him could be very annoying. And also, all these camps over here, the Visage, can consider going in and farming that. Although I do have to be a bit careful. At this point, there are only 2 heroes with level 6, which are not dangerous enough. But at this point, Visage killing the Lycan. But I was going to say Lycan has his ultimate up as well, so therefore I should be that much more careful. But I had an Invis rune up, and I was scouting with familiars. My Visage was near the familiars. I wanted to kill the Visage, and you know, I'm just using my timing here a lot. Like what I'm doing is just stalling for time until, like, farming a bit until I have my next items. I got the hood. Reason I got the hood is because I'm facing off against Storm. Does considerable magical damage, and I think. Well, okay, this game magic resistance was not the most easy thing to go for, but you know, I tend to just go for it. What's the alternative to getting the Hood of Defiance into pipe? Say it's really useless. Get a Crimson Guard instead. But anyways, get a resistance item. Just get an item that makes you that much more tanky. Just that great mid-game item. A mech is fine, but the thing is, against armor heroes, I prefer going the Crimson Guard, getting that Vanguard, and just being more resistant to that. Because the thing with mech is you quickly lose mana with its active, and I think Crimson Guard is more effective against but I don't tend to buy
Radiant are
it in the
scanning for
end
enemies.
because usually I play against lineups with magical damage,
Radiant's middle
especially
tower is under
these
attack.
patches. You got the talents, magical damage heroes. They skill pretty good. So yeah, at this point you can see my hero being ganked, and he took a bit of time to go on me, and therefore I got my layers back up. This means that they have a really tough time killing me. I have 1 stack now. He goes up against me. I have 4 stacks again. So if he does damage to
Dire's
me,
bottom tower's
it's
getting
still very low. And guess where they are? They are far beyond the
Tower's under
T1,
attack.
and because we still have the T1 standing, we still have that control over here. So if they can't safely just go on me and kill me there. And there's a medallion of
Killing spree.
it just ran out, but you know, I killed the
Dire's
Bane
bottom
with
tower
familiars.
is under attack.
Could argue maybe it was a kill steal from Timber Saw, but hey, I did the baiting there. If it wasn't for me being in this position over here,
Dire's
hitting the
bottom
T2,
tower.
they would not have committed
Don't
for me.
look
I was
good.
just poking the T2, knowing, you know, they can't really do too much, and that was the best they could do at that point. Um,
Dire's bottom
you
tower
could
is
argue
under
that I was a bit
attack.
overzealous at that point, because Bane ult plus Storm damage could be enough, but you know, I'm still very tanky with my hood. Um, so yeah, usually what I go for is I go medallion, hood. If it were to be a high skill game, I would go for a helm with the dominator. Probably replace the hood for that. Maybe not. I could also just always go for the hood after. And and the cool thing about pipe, by the way, is it has the headdress that I mentioned in the helm of the dominator, which gives regen to your familiars, which is great. Um, but yeah, after those 2 items, the Medallion of Courage and the Hood of Defiance, I get the Solar Crest. Solar Crest is just outright broken on this hero. Um, one tip I'll give you, don't tend to overuse Solar Crest. If you don't use it, Visage has the evasion, which makes him super hard to kill. So me getting attacked, don't use the rest of the So yeah. Build the pipe right after, and after all this you get the Aghanims. And after Aghanims you can consider items like AC, Shiva's Guard, Sheep Stick,
Radiant's bottom tower needs a
if
hit.
it really helps, Bloodthorn, something like that.
Radiant's
I would argue Aeon this is not stick it,
Killing
but really,
spree.
what do you want to accomplish from that? I think you already last long enough with the resistance that you have, that Aeon this, like, what you're doing
Radiant's bottom tower
with that
needs a hit.
extra time you have being alive,
His top tower's
you can't deal damage during this, it's just useless. And you can already survive the initial jump with your passive, so you already kind of go for this. So yeah, you want to focus on killing towers in the game. You just have a really easy time doing that. By the way, the talents you go for are pretty much when you press the plus on above the talent tree, always press the first. Just press the button 1. Just press 1. Get the 30 damage, get the double soul assumption hit, get the movement speed for the familiars, and just get that extra familiar. 4 familiars plus grave chill plus armor reduction you get in late game skills really well, deals a lot of damage. Um, yeah, by the way, you don't get a boots upgrade. You can just get the boots of travel later on in the game. I tend to get it very, 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 very late, and I just maximize the usage of backpack. Another thing I do is I always buy 2 clarities and a healing salve so that I never have to go back to base. Because the problem with this hero is that he's very, very slow. So if he TP's back, he has to walk for it where he wants to go, and it just takes too long. So it's better to just buy the regen constantly and make sure that you keep up keep your mana up and your clarity and stuff like that. One thing I haven't mentioned, I mean, the game is going to play out. At this point, all I'm doing is just prioritizing mid and bottom lane. Top lane or bottom lane if I were to be Radiant. Top lane is least important.
Top tower ain't looking too
OpenAI
steady.
showed that. It's just
Dire's
the
middle tower
toughest
is
to
under
like
attack.
dominate and retain map control over with. This side of this jungle over here, this big jungle, is very nice to have. If the enemy team only has control over this segment, then it's still too little control, etc, etc. There's only one thing I have to show you guys, and that is the combo. If I have to go back to demo, it's something I forgot to do. I mean, it's not just enough to have the hotkeys, but the combo, we're gonna assume we're having the maximum amount of active items If you were to buy passive items, then the combo gets easier, so it's that obvious. But um, yeah, I'm just gonna maximize my Visage and show you potential combos you can go for as soon as the loading is done. um, let's see. Okay, we're gonna go to level max. 1 1 1 1. Just only one. Those are the talents you want. Let's see. We want an Agonist, we want Solar Crest. Assuming we have the maximum amount of active items. Generally. Let's get an AC. Helps our familiar deal more damage. Boots of Travel. Why the fuck not? It's not really mandatory that you get these items particularly, but you know, I just want to recreate the exact items you would have in the end game. Basilius, Kappa. Nah, in the end game you would at some point just sell it. Maybe Nullifier. Nullifier is not that bad on this hero. It's general item, like buy it when it's good. Sure, let's just get the Nullifier as well. I'm gonna use the same method as I did with the Tinker video. I'm just gonna use Alt Q, Alt W, Alt E. If you guys haven't seen it before, it's gonna look like this. This is my normal cast. It's armor item hotkeys, but on a quick cast, the bottom 3 hotkey slots are Alt Q, Alt W, Alt E, and yeah, it's essentially just pressing down those 3 buttons if I need them. I'm gonna create a dummy, and the combo is as follows. Step 0 is to position your familiars where they are near you, preferably in a radius within you for you to apply the Grave Shield bonus on them. By the way, as soon as they are given the Grave Shield, they can leave the area of effect you are in. So you can use Grave Shield on an enemy creep and then just leave while the familiars are still hitting a tower, for example. And you can just leave them alone. They will still have the Grave Shield for 6 seconds, even though they are out of your radius. Combo is essentially using Q and Solar Crest, ironically at the same time. For me, that's Q, left mouse button, and Alt Q. Don't have to left mouse button again because it's quick cast. Combine that essentially with a Scythe of Vice or Nullifier. I wouldn't stack them, but in this case, we're assuming we want to combine everything. Why not? That's Alt W, Alt E. And every time your bars over here are on maximum, you want to use your W. Just use it, just every time. And see it in action. Okay, I was a bit distracted because I realized that dealing damage to the dummy actually does not give you any charges. But let's assume that it's going to go up. It's very rapid. Understand that your Soul Assumption only has a cooldown of 4 seconds on all levels, which is very, very low. It's like Zeus Q. Okay, it's not that short, but still, it's very, very low. And it's a lot of damage. It's like 380 damage when you have maximum charges. Excluding Spell Amp, and if you for some reason go for the talent that adds the damage, it's even more. But no need to, although it combines really well with the extra Soul Assumption hits. I think that's better if you don't opt for more familiars, which is better if you go support, because you won't make it to get these armor items for the familiars to do more damage. So let's do it again. Under pressure, I just forget the combo. Let's just put it on free spells. I think the best thing to do first, it's something that I would automatically do in the game itself, is just send your familiars first to the enemy and then do the abilities, so like this.
They're trying to knock down your middle tower.
As you can see, I tabbed through my familiars. I use tab Q, tab Q, tab Q, tab Q, kind of like the Pooflin combo. However, this is completely unnecessary. You can just use your D button or just your first stop ability button, and then they will stack as well. And you want to do it in this rhythm. Okay, that was not static. It was like doom, 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 essentially. And one final tip I can give you guys, by the way, if you feel like going crazy, you're in a fight and it's just very convenient, what you can do is you can do the following. That's a very long stun lock. It's gonna last longer than 10 seconds if you stack it perfectly. It's like 8 times 1.5. Roughly 8 times 1.2 because you're a human. You're not gonna do that perfectly. Unless it's not really important for you to actually keep the stun stack perfect. It's just about pinning the enemy on the same position. Then you don't have to worry about the intervals between the stuns, so you don't have to pop them earlier. What I did was I resummoned my ultimate as soon as I went through the cycle of using the familiar stuns constantly. When you have only 2 familiars, you can have up to 4 stuns. When you have 3 familiars, it's 6 stuns in a row. When you have 4 familiars, you can have 8 stuns in a row. It's very, very broken. I've utilized this many times in games. Feel free to use it when you see fit for it. Try to time it around when you've leveled up your ultimate. I think I've said it before. If you level up your ultimate, the familiars will be updated in HP damage and stone form
If your
stats
mid
only
tower
if you
could talk,
resummon them.
it'd be pretty
Same
mad
goes
at
with
you.
Agdams. They will only add an extra familiar as soon as you resummon them. So you can use that where you stun with them, then you resummon them and
Your
stun
middle
with
tower
the
is under
stronger
attack.
familiars. It's a very good combo. So that's pretty much everything I could tell you about Visage as far as I know at the moment. I hope I,
Look, the enemy's attacking your middle tower.
uh,
Don't let him do
you
that.
know, increased your Visage skills. But practice makes perfect. Try to tune it by actually playing the hero. You can. I don't know how well the experience is when you played against bots, but don't be scared to play it. You need to practice at some point. Try it in normal game, try it in a party. I'd say this build, by the way, works in mid, but you can also play off lane duo with it. But try to make sure that your lane partner, which is obviously going to be the 4, try to make sure that that lane partner leaves you alone at some point when you can handle the lane on your own, when you have enough levels for it, or when the enemy carries left alone. Um, because you do want the XP, and you can put it same lane carry, but like I said before, you want to leave it alone. So even your 5, give it some space to leave. And cool thing you can do is when you are level 6 in any of the lanes, you can start jungling or hit the tower in your lane. But if you're in the safe lane, hitting the tower that you're going up against, I would only do it if it's really easy. If it's tough, go mid, go top. The team ones there are more important. Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you guys learned a lot from this, and we'll see if I make more content. Goodbye.